Hi, we're back with a mortgage expert, Marcus Tzaferis. He's with MorCan Direct. Marcus, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, mortgages, hot topic. Oh my goodness, we've seen the rules change so many times. I mean, I'm dating myself, but I fought for those 5% down mortgages with CMHC and we won. And then nobody said the subprime was here, and yet we had 0%, cashbacks, 40-year amortization. Now, Ottawa's clamped down on all of that. And now, as you know, you got to, if you get a new mortgage, you got to stress test, and you got to be able to afford whether it's variable or fixed rate, 2% higher. And it's 20% down now for an uninsured mortgage. So is that making it tougher for particularly millennials to get approved? And how?
Definitely. I mean, I think that all of the rule changes have been pretty significant,
Yes.
and the impact that they're having on first-time home buyers is probably the most pronounced.
Right.
It becomes really difficult when you need to prove income to qualify you for a mortgage with a 5% mortgage rate when interest rates are actually half of that or even lower in some cases.
Yeah.
So we're seeing people struggle to qualify for conventional mortgages like we've never seen before, and that's increasing the cost of those mortgages.
Okay, but here we've got Toronto. To buy a detached home at 1.15 million, it costs, you need an income of 200,000. Shouldn't we be helping more to help these particularly younger children get into the market than making it more difficult?
I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I think that anyone entering the market now probably wants to proceed with some caution.
Yes.
Just since April, I was reading some stats, just since April of this year, when the foreign homebuyers tax was implemented in Toronto, we've seen a roughly 40% drop in activity in Toronto, which is huge. We've also seen a 19% drop in housing prices. So
that's good for the young people who want to get in.
It's great, but I mean, if you were to compare it to, you know, investors in the stock market, you never really want to enter into a market like this when there is this much uncertainty.
Okay.
And it's magnified by the fact that these millennials, these first-time homebuyers, are really putting all of the money they have behind something, and they're not only investing, but they're also taking on a really significant amount of debt.
Yes.
And that can get pretty scary.
Of course.
So the reason why I would say it's important to exercise caution right now is you don't want a first-time homebuyer entering in the Toronto market, struggling to qualify, cobbling together all the money they have to enter in to get a $500,000, 600 square foot condo in the downtown core, only to see that condo drop in value.
Okay. So you're erring on the side of caution.
For sure.
For sure. Yeah. But let's say for anybody who's, let's say, renewing a mortgage, this is the time then to lock in these rates, because we have seen rates on rise.
So again, that's a great question, right? It's like the $1 million, probably more than $1 million question right now.
Yes.
I believe, and I'll tell you how I get to this. I believe that it's a great time for a variable rate.
Okay. Yeah, that's a different.
I believe that we've got so many factors currently influencing the Canadian real estate market. Just to name the ones that probably have the most dramatic impact. Right now, the 15% foreign home buyers tax, huge impact. Probably still hasn't truly been felt in the market. We've got the Bank of Canada increasing interest rates when inflation really isn't on their horizon. So we're seeing CPI numbers at 1.5%, and the Bank of Canada taking a stance that we will now be increasing interest rates. Another real big factor that's going to influence the real estate market. More recently, and probably less of a massive factor, but still, Home Capital Group. Home Capital Group having liquidity problems, having to retract from the market, and then the scare that puts into other GIC-based lenders really reduces access to borrowers who don't qualify conventionally. So, you know, non-income qualifying, business for self. 15% of Canadians work for themselves.
I know, and Home Capital filled that void.
Exactly, yeah. And and there were smaller players in that market, and all of them now are worried that, hey, if we aggressively continue to covet this market, we may see our GICs diminish. We may see our depositors leave, and that creates more liquidity concern. Although I think a lot of that has kind of flushed itself out of the system, I think that they're really still on pause. So I think that these factors, so the tax, and not to mention these government regulations.
Of course.
So there's a lot that we can say just about those government regulations, but let's just assume that they're having a definite negative impact on housing. So all of these factors put together lead me to believe that housing will probably continue to see declines.
Declines or...
Right, and if we continue to see declines in housing, and by some estimates, 65% of Canada's GDP is reliant on housing,
of course,
then it's logical to think that our economy will suffer. So although currently we're seeing the Bank of Canada increase interest rates.
So you don't think this is going to continue then, the increase in interest rates?
I don't. I think it's almost a gesture. It's almost a way to show that there's a concerted effort provincially, federally, and on the part of the governor of the Bank of Canada to slow down our housing. And I think that's important, but I also think that if we make decisions like selecting a 5-year fixed rate mortgage that have consequences for 5 years, based on information that's taken today, this snapshot, we may end up damaging cash flow, or we may end up actually losing out because of that fear.
Well, it's an interesting market right now. So I guess the advice to anybody when shopping around for a mortgage is shop around and get knowledge, as you were just saying.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
I really appreciate you being on the show, Marcus.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all the time that we have for this week's show. Please join me next time when we will be discussing more financial matters that affect you. Until next time, I'll be watching over your money.